The views and opinions expressed by participants in the following public affairs program do not necessarily reflect the position or beliefs of WDEF or its staff.
Since 1954, this is Point of View, the world record-holding public affairs program produced at the studios of WDEF-TV Chattanooga and with underwriting community support.
Hi, I'm Mark West, and welcome to another edition of Point of View. Today we're going to be talking about electric vehicles and hybrid vehicles, and to help us talk about that and explore the subject, we have two guests with us today. First, we have Chip Monk, who presently owns a hybrid, or excuse me, a battery vehicle. And then also we have Mark Kennedy, who is the automotive editor for Times Free Press. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you. Yeah, thanks for having us.
So, Chip, let me ask you, start with you. So you presently own a battery-operated vehicle.
Yes, I do.
Tell us a little bit about what is it, and whatever encouraged you to go out and buy something this high-tech?
I've been a fan of high-tech since I was a kid. And my car is a Model S Tesla, P85, 85 kW battery. And what possessed me to go get it was just the practicality of it. Now, most people don't think of a practical car as costing over $60,000 or $70,000, but when you consider that it never needs gas or oil or a timing belt or a tune-up or anything of that nature, and there's only 6 moving parts in the drivetrain, to me, that was pretty practical.
Okay, well, that's you shared with me several things right then that I didn't know. 6 moving parts, that's amazing. But Mark, let me ask you, now you have a job that probably many guys would love to have.
Probably so.
Yeah,
yes.
You get to drive cars pretty much all the time,
yep.
The latest technology out there.
Yep.
So, but there's a lot of different terms that are used in this particular field. So we have hybrids, we have plug-in hybrids, we have electric vehicles. Kind of explain the differences in
Okay,
those.
I'll try to do that. One of the things to remember is that hybrid automobiles, as part of the mass market, have been around now for almost 20 years. Mm-hmm. The Honda Insight was the first really mass market hybrid car that came out in 1999. So that was 18 years ago. Soon after that, the Toyota Prius came out. Which now Toyota has sold almost 10 million hybrid vehicles worldwide in the last 20 years. So it really is a significant segment of the mass market vehicle population out there, for lack of a better word. One of the things that we've noticed, though, a long time is that the technologies have changed some. A clear hybrid vehicle is one that has a gasoline engine in it and an electric motor that's run from a battery pack. Mm-hmm. I like to think of it sort of in terms of like a wrestling tag team. You know, one jumps in the ring and starts doing work, it gets tired, and the other one comes in. At points, they may even jump in the ring together and gang up and do work together. But you've got those two elements of propulsion working together. A true electric car is run only on batteries. The downside to that is that if you run out of juice on the road, it does something that Chip knows called bricking, which means your car becomes a brick. Nobody can bring you a charge like they can bring you a gallon of gasoline. So you have to get to a place where your car can be recharged. In some cases, it might be a home charging system. In Chip's case with a Tesla, it could be a rapid charging system at an airport or another public place. So that's the main difference. An EV is a battery-powered car that doesn't have a gasoline engine component. A hybrid has both a gasoline engine and an electric motor.
Okay, so Mark, you see a lot of these and you test drive a lot of these. Are these cars really affordable? Can the average individual out there really afford one of these cars?
Absolutely, absolutely. Yes, as a matter of fact, most hybrid vehicles now are only a few $1,000s more than their gasoline-only equivalent. I've owned 2 hybrids personally over time. One is a Toyota Camry hybrid, and the car I drive now is a Ford Fusion hybrid. Both of those cars retail for $2,000, $3,000, maybe $4,000 more than the gasoline-only version of the car. If you think about the fuel economy, you get that money back pretty quickly. Both of those cars that I just mentioned get about 40 miles to the gallon. The gasoline equivalent, maybe 5 to 10 miles a gallon less. So if you keep a car, like I do for several years, over time, just in fuel savings, you make up that difference and more.
Sure. Now, Chip, let me ask you, when we're talking about a pure battery-powered car like yours, the Tesla, do you run into a problem with range? I hear that that's some of the issues that we've seen a problem with these cars. They can't really go that far. So how is that? How have you seen that in your particular car?
Well, range is obviously the biggest fear factor that was out there to begin with, and I think right now we've probably overcome that. We've overcome it. Tesla's overcome it because, well, I can plug my car into any source of electricity. I can plug it into a 110 wall outlet. I can plug it into a 220. I can plug it into a Tesla supercharger, which is obviously the best place to plug it in. And when I bought the car, there were only 71 superchargers in the United States. Now, there's 368 superchargers in the United States, and they're building more all the time.
There's one here in Chattanooga, right?
There is. There's one at our airport out there, and I use it regularly. But there's no place that you can go in the United States right now unless you want to go to the very center, northern edge of North Dakota. Every other place in the United States you can get there via supercharger now. So there's that range anxiety that people had. They don't have that anymore.
Yeah. Now, Mark, have you seen these cars really be embraced by the public? Are they beginning to be fairly popular?
Yes, as a matter of fact, Forbes magazine just reported that there was a 37% increase in sales of electric vehicles, EVs, last year. People might think that's a little counterintuitive because with gas prices around $2 a gallon, you'd think most people aren't looking to buy super fuel-efficient cars like EVs tend to be. I should tell you that some of that was driven by some California laws that cause dealers in that state to discount prices so they can meet thresholds that the government had set. So I'm not sure that's a totally market-driven growth. Having said that, though, there has been consistent growth over time in electronic vehicles and in hybrids. We're about 150,000 EVs sold last year. You have to remember, though, that's a fractional market. Ford, for instance, sells 800,000 F-150 trucks a year. Yeah. So still a small portion, of the driving public have adopted electronic vehicles. But as a guy who drives 100 cars a year, I'm convinced that's the direction in the future. I think a generation from now, our children will be driving electric cars just because it makes sense, both from an economic standpoint. Even if you aren't an environmentalist, the performance of these cars has gotten to the point where they're equal to, or in the case of Tesla, above what you could expect in a gasoline-powered car. They have fewer moving parts, so they're much easier to maintain. Altogether, as a package, there's so many incentives for cars to become electric and not be driven by this antiquated gasoline internal combustion engine technology that we've been living with for 100 years and more, that I think it's just inevitable that's where we're going.
Now, Chip, you mentioned this just briefly, but off air, you and I have talked about this before, about the maintenance issues associated with your Tesla, a totally battery-operated car. So tell me, tell our viewers a little bit about the maintenance that you have to deal with regularly on this car.
The things that I have to deal with regularly are making sure that I have water in the windshield wiper fluid reservoir. I have to worry about tires. Everybody has to worry about tires. There's very little else. There's no oil, there's no gasoline, there's no timing belts or tune-ups or anything of that nature. So there's very little in the way of maintenance. My car has been down for its scheduled maintenance trips, and when I go down, they give me a new battery for my key fob, and they make sure that I have the fluids are topped up. But the fluids, I mean, they're virtually none. There's almost no maintenance involved in the car.
Now, from most people that read about cars know that Tesla is a pretty high-priced car.
Yes, sir.
Pretty pricey vehicle. So I've heard, though, that there's a lower-priced car that's coming out for Tesla. Can you talk a little bit about that?
I sure can. I've got one on order.
Okay. What is that?
On day one, I stood in line at the Marietta Tesla store in order to put one on order. It's the Model 3, and the Model 3 is going to come out. It's going to be about 80% as large as my Model S, and it's going to look somewhat similar to the Model S and the Model X, which is their SUV. If you put them both together and then cut it down to 80%, that's what it's going to look like. And that car, the base price is going to be $35,000. Elon Musk has maintained that and held firm to it and said, no, that's what it's going to be. And so for $35,000, you can have a base model Tesla, And on day one, over 280,000 people stood in line all over the United States to get that car, to put that car on order.
Wow. Well, Mark, I think you were mentioning something about VW coming out with some type of a battery-operated car soon.
Yeah, it was just announced this week. It's very exciting news. Many of us who came of age in the 60s and 70s remember the Volkswagen bus, the iconic van. Volkswagen announced yesterday that it's going to begin producing Volkswagen Microbuses, is what they call them now, soon. I think for the 2020 model year, if I'm remembering right. And they're going to be electronic. They're not going to have gas engines in them. I hold out hope, and I have nothing to back this up at this point, but that they might manufacture those here in Chattanooga at their plant. They have committed to putting an EV line in here. The American market will be the primary market for this vehicle, so wouldn't it be great to have that produced right here in Hamilton County?
It sure would be. Now, there's another, is it hybrid or battery-operated car that's being produced up in Middle Tennessee?
The Nissan Leaf, which came out in 2011, is a full EV. It's an electric car.
So Chattanoogans here could be supporting our local Tennessee economy if they bought a Leaf.
They absolutely could, yes. And there are significant lease deals that they do on these cars to sort of lower the price. There have been in the past some tax advantages too. You can get some tax rebates. I'm not sure where we stand on that, so I better not quote it. But in general, for electronic cars, there are tax rebates to be had, so you can deduct a little bit from the price. Just to add to what Chip was talking about, he said that the entry-level Tesla is going to be $35,000. The average transaction price for automobiles in the United States now is $33,000.
Wow.
So Tesla in one leap has gone into the mainstream. That's how quick things can turn.
So Chip, we have about a minute left, and I hear that sometimes you harass young teenagers in their Camaros at stoplights. Is this true about you?
No, I don't harass anybody.
They
I take advantage of their harassing me.
Oh, okay. So you sometimes peel out a little bit and show them the power of a Tesla.
My Tesla doesn't peel out. I can't turn the wheels over if I wanted to.
Okay.
But it will go 0 to 60 in under 4 seconds. So it's kind of fun with a Camaro next to you when they have no clue what you're in and you do something like that.
Yeah. So Tesla, is it Tesla.com if someone wants to check that out?
TeslaMotors.com.
Yeah, and it's really interesting. You won't find a Tesla dealership around, will you? They're usually in malls, is that right?
That's true. That's true. You won't find one. The closest one in Tennessee would be in Brentwood. And then Marietta, Georgia has one there too.
And they just have like a small room, is that right?
It's a large store. They have typically 3 to 4 cars inside, the different models and the different battery options.
Okay. All right, well listen gentlemen, I sure appreciate you coming on the show, and we'll have to do this again sometime.
I would love to.
Yeah.
So next, is NASCAR the new frontier for inner city youths? Stay with us.
We taught him how to hit a baseball. How to hit a receiver, the strike zone, the net. You taught him how to hit the upper corner. You even taught him how to hit the open man. But how much time have you spent teaching him what not to hit?
It's a short ride from your neighborhood to your naturehood. To find a neighborhood park or green space near you, visit discovertheforest.org.
It takes less than 1 minute to find out if you may have prediabetes, and you can do it here. So what are you waiting for? Just go to the site.
You make me wear my bike helmet. Taught me never to run with scissors. And to follow the swimming rules.
You tell me to stay away from drugs.
To always buckle my seatbelt.
So why do you keep a loaded gun in your drawer?
How safe is that?
You asked them to follow some safety rules. Now they're asking you. In fact, they're counting on you. Never let your gun get into the wrong hands. Remember, always lock it up. Visit ncpc.org.
From Tesla to NASCAR, on this issue of Point of View, we're going to look at a company that is changing the way we look at NASCAR, including diversity and youth. My name is Vincent Ivan Phipps. I'm one of your co-hosts, also joined by Ruth Carter Hickman and Mark West. This segment, we're going to look at a company called Thumbprint that is co-founded by a young man who wanted to change diversity and also include youth with NASCAR. Let's welcome our host, our guest, Mr. John Hill. Good to meet you, John.
Nice to meet you guys as well. Thank you so much for having me on the show. I really appreciate it.
It's an honor, John. John, tell the world about what you're doing with NASCAR and how it involves the youth with Thumbprint.
Yeah. Growing up, I've always wanted to be a race car driver. That was a dream I had when I was 4 years old.
Right.
We just didn't have the money like the average American.
Gotcha.
And so basically I'm trying to develop a way for myself and also others in the community to not just be a fan, but to actually go out there and compete.
Just how expensive could it be to involve in NASCAR? Because not a lot, you can't really go in and just try out NASCAR. Like you have your helmet here. Like what might something like this cost if somebody wants this tryout NASCAR?
Yeah, if you just wanted to try it out,
right?
This helmet's gonna run you around $3,000.
Gotcha.
Wow. So that's a problem that we're having as far as getting people involved in the grassroots community, like getting kids up and trying to get them to be an avid race car fan. Because they can't go to Walmart and buy a soccer ball for $15.
Gotcha.
It's way more expensive, but technology is becoming a huge thing, just like Tesla. And so racing simulation is totally way more affordable.
Right.
So there's a lack of diversity in NASCAR, and you mentioned finances, but
Absolutely.
How much are we talking about, and what's the ratio between the diverse population of participants?
Yeah, there is 23% total of multicultural fans that attend or maybe have just watched once last year in NASCAR. And that is, as you can tell, America is becoming more multicultural, and so NASCAR is trying to do what they can to bring other people along to get them interested as well.
Wonderful. In looking at the history of NASCAR, I know there have been movies such as Thunder Road about the Tennessee Moonshiner, or about Wendell Scott, the first African-American to win NASCAR. What are the things that you're wanting the audience to know about how NASCAR got its origins and how Thumbprint's going to make a difference of increasing that diversity?
Yeah, I think, number one, you're right. I mean, Wendell Scott was a great guy, and he raced the heck out of his car. And, and it did start. I mean, basically the government was like, man, we need to get these moonshiner runners off the track, and we're going to put them on a track and they can go compete.
Gotcha.
But I think Thumbprint is a super valuable as far as taking kids who don't think that they have a shot and making it and saying, no, you do, and this is how you do it.
Gotcha. Excellent.
What is Thumbprint?
So Thumbprint is a company that I started, and the reason why was because I had so many conversations with saying, man, like, you got it, you should be up there, so where's your money?
Right.
And I followed the question with, I don't have one, I don't have money.
Right.
My dad's side of the family is African American, we're from the projects of North Carolina. And then my mom's side of the family is from a little town in Salina, Kansas. So there's this massive shift, and so as I'm trying to have these conversations, I quickly think, man, if I just started something, I could actually help myself and help other kids along if they have a dream like me.
Absolutely, wonderful.
So where did the name Thumbprint come from?
The idea is no one in the past, present, or future will ever and has ever had your thumbprint. And so it's placing value back on the kid, back on the fan, back on the community, because the reality is you're going to leave an impact on your community, and it's just up to you to decide how big or how small or how clear or how smudgy you want your thumbprint to be. And that's something that I deeply want to value. Through anyone who either partners or collaborates with Thumbprint, is the number one fact is, man, we value you.
Well, that's interesting because there's a lot of kids, you brought up community, that do illegal street racing, and maybe it's because of these prices to participate are just so high.
Yeah.
What's the solution?
So we are actually partnering with two nonprofits currently and looking to expand. One's in Cincinnati, Ohio, and then another one's in Nashville, Tennessee. And what we're doing is we're putting these racing simulators in as part of their after-school kid programs. And so in order, just like with football or basketball, how they treat you to be or train you to be, hopefully a professional athlete in those sports, this will just be alongside it. And so you can go get trained, but it's an all-encompassing thing. Like, we don't want you to just be a great athlete, we want you to be a great human being as well. And so you have to be out of drugs, you have to be going to school, so you have to strive for something on and off the track.
What do you say to the person at home right now that may have an interest in NASCAR or may know of someone who has an interest in NASCAR? What would you recommend that they would do just to get started, John?
I think a couple different things. One, if you have money, you can go the traditional route and you know, get plugged in that way.
So for the other 99%, what do they?
So for the other 99, like me, simulation racing is becoming a huge thing. And
what's simulation racing?
So you can buy a simulator, and basically all the tracks in NASCAR are laser scanned. The cars are laser scanned. So every pebble in the Charlotte Motor Speedway is in this game. And so the car acts, feels just like it would when you're out on the track.
How much does this cost? Like if I wanted to buy one, and if I'm a girl, what dreams do I have? I know there's some major girls in NASCAR.
They're competing now, absolutely. And
I think we have an image of one of the young ladies.
Yes, the first African-American driver.
And she's doing great. She's linked up with NASCAR Diversity, and so she's going about it that way, and hopefully I'll be joining her on the track through that process.
Wow, and you know her father was a famous, you know, racer as well, Bobby.
Yeah, he was great.
So have you been able to connect with any of the drivers on the circuit that might be interested in helping you along with this project?
Absolutely. So Michael McDowell, who currently races in the Monster Energy Series, heard my story and heard what I was doing, and so he's actually helping me set up a trial day coming up soon, and that will be alongside with David Gilliland and hopefully making a run for it that way.
How can the community get involved? How can our viewers get involved with your cause and help?
Absolutely. So we have an email and a website. So you can either email me, and it's john@thumbprintracing.com, or you can go to our website, and it's www.thumbprintracing.com.
When you first had this epiphany that you wanted to be a racer, share with our audience what it was like and what was your story behind you made the decision the first time you got behind the wheel that you wanted to make this your career and pave a path for others to also follow that NASCAR path, John.
It was a painful process, I'll say that. The first time I remember, I went to my first race when I was 8 years old. It was in 1996, and me and my father were the only people of color that I saw in the, you know, probably 150,000 seat stands. And I just remember looking at my dad and saying, "This is what I'm created to do." And so through that process, as I started to figure out, okay, what does this look like? I was like, that's when I was like, man, there needs to be a caveat to help people out in the community around the world to say, man, if you have a dream, money should never be a reason why you get turned down. There might be other reasons, but I don't think that should be that's a good answer, a good enough answer.
What was your first experience when you drove for the first time? How did that lead to Thumbprint?
So alongside, I was going and pursuing dreams of getting my college degree, which I'm extremely dyslexic, so I never thought that was even possible. And so after I got a 4.0 for one of my first semester in college, I was like, man, I'm going to go celebrate. And so I went to this Richard Petty experience, and the cars had governors, but along the, and that was at Nashville. And just did the best I could, and people were very pleased with what came out of that.
So speak about the NASCAR Diverse program. I know they have one, and they're pushing to diverse the sport.
Absolutely.
Because it's predominantly male, and it's predominantly, no offense, Mark West, Caucasian.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So Max Siegel is the owner and CEO of the NASCAR Diversity program. It's called Rev Racing. And so basically what happens is if you have they call them a driving record, so you got to show that you've been in a car, done races or whatever, then you get to go and compete in a combine. But like me, that's a problem because I currently don't have a driving record. And so, but racing simulation is becoming a huge thing. Alex Bowman, he actually races for Junior Motorsports now, and he got his start through simulation racing. And so our goal is to get kids involved, get myself involved, and get them a shot, even if they don't have, you know, spent the hundreds of thousands of dollars to make.
When you say driving record, what is that?
So basically what that is as many races as you have competed in or you've won, that's part of your driving record. And so they want to just see how much real life time have you had in a car before they just throw you out there.
You know, I went to the Indy 500 just a couple weeks ago, and it's really interesting how you referenced that one race you went to when you were 8 years old, how you were the only person of color there with your dad. And that was kind of what I remember seeing now at the Indy 500. It was predominantly Caucasians everywhere. Yet most of those guys and gals will never race.
Right.
Okay. So I'm curious, has the black community never really been that attracted to motorsports, or what's your thought about that?
I think one of the objects is if there's no one really to identify with when you're watching, it's very hard to say, man, there's something in that for me.
Right.
In the black community, not a lot of people started watching golf until Tiger Woods started playing, or until Michael Jordan started playing basketball. And so that was something that a lot of the NBA and even in golfing, they're like, man, we got to start the grassroots level, get kids involved, and we got to figure out a way to get them involved. And so that's what I'm trying to do.
That's a great point, because even in the NFL, it was predominantly like white.
Right. And the NBA.
Yeah.
And every other sport.
White players.
Correct.
Yeah.
We have about a minute left, John. What would you like to share in conclusion about what you want Thumbprint to be in terms of how it can have an impact on not just the youth, but people in general, for those maybe unaware of racing?
My hope and dream for this thing is to be in every city, every major city in America, so that if a kid wants to come, whether he's in a rural part of the city or he's in the inner city, he can come, he can get some experience, he can learn, and then see if he wants to be involved. And Thumbprint Kids is going to be the nonprofit running alongside of it.
Gotcha.
And so we will actually pay when they get good enough to be on racing simulation. We'll pay for them to get in a real life car and see what they can do.
That's incredible.
Thank you very much, John, for joining us, sir. It's been a pleasure.
Absolutely. Thank you so much
Good
for
luck
having
to
me.
you.
Thank you.
We'll be watching.
That's good.
I've been your host, Vincent Ivan Phipps, joined by co-host Mark West and also Ruth Carter Hickman. For our next episode of Point of View, each one, reach one. A Chattanooga Police Department on the next Point of View.
Closed captioning provided by the following.
Funding for this program is brought to you by Barnett & Company, specializing in tax-efficient strategies for the preservation and distribution of family wealth, offering continuous investment management with a focus on long-term strategies. Areas of service include investment, estate, education, and retirement planning. Barnett & Company, the power of compound returns over time. More information can be found on the web at barnettandcompany.com.